It's Friday, November 3rd. I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Football Show. It is a hell of a day to talk ball, and joining me to do that is Dalton Del Don for the double dip this week. Dalton, what's going on, buddy?
Not much. Sounds like stuff's going on your way, though. We had a blackout in the Harmon neighborhood. Pushed our start back. Everything okay over there?
Yes, everything is good. Yeah, we lost power in our house, actually our entire neighborhood, and I think 600 people were affected here in the local area, according to my neighbor, who I have no reason to believe is lying to me. But so pretty stressful on the day that we record the preview podcast. We have FFL going later on today, so was an interesting last couple of hours for sure. But you know what, Dalton? Football never sleeps. Fantasy waits for no one. Blackout be damned. I mean, I was about to, go to my mom's condo or something. I mean, we were going to figure something out to do the show because the people need their Triple D spice takes.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Definitely excited to talk some previews this week. Let's get to it.
Yes, let's get right into it. For the uninitiated here, if this is your first time, just a little reminder how we do our preview format on this show. We give you the games you want to binge, stream, and skip every single week. The games that you want to binge, they're the shows that you can't miss. You're watching as soon as it's live. You may crush all the episodes in one weekend. We got great binge games this weekend, by the way, so look forward to that. The games you want to stream, little less appeal in those. You're going to watch those shows start to finish, but you're probably doing that over the course of maybe a few weeks. And lastly, the games you want to skip. These are the shows you're leaning towards passing on. You might catch an episode here or there, but not really for you. Dalton, I'll tell you what, buddy. The longer we get into the season, the closer we get to the Thanksgiving, Christmas window, the skip category is going to become very, very skippy. I mean, we've got some teams in here that are trending very high on the Matt Harmon does not give a damn about you anymore. So that is going to be fun. But we'll try to give some appeal to those games. But let's waste no more time. Like I said, we have 4 incredible games this weekend. We've got some awesome ones to talk about in the binge category, starting with the Germany game, Miami Dolphins at Kansas City Chiefs, quote unquote. The Chiefs are 1.5 point favorites. We got a 50.5 total in this one, Dalton. I mean, just a lot to say about both of these teams, but let's start with the Chiefs because I'll pose this question to you, Dalton. I don't want to ask how worried are you about the Chiefs, but because I think it's kind of stupid. They'll be fine. They have the best quarterback on planet Earth. I'm not worried about the Chiefs, but let's throw out a scenario. The Dolphins jump up to a 17-point lead in this game because they can do that to anybody. How confident would you be in that scenario that the Chiefs can put the pedal to the floor and come back in that scenario with the current state of their wide receiver room?
Yeah, 17 points is obviously a tall task for any team, but I remain relatively confident. They have the best coach-quarterback combo in the league, maybe the best quarterback of all time, coming off a rare off game. Maybe I'm a square, but I immediately made this my best bet of the week. The Chiefs giving less than 3 points with Mahomes coming off a loss. Don't love the information I learned since that the Dolphins went earlier in the week, whereas the Chiefs did not. But Miami's dealing with offensive line problems. I really do believe in this Chiefs defense and just Mahomes. I mean, I know it's boring analysis, but yeah, I mean, is there a concern? No Taylor Swift there for Kelsey? Maybe, but in all seriousness, Mahomes, I just expect to bounce back and rip apart a beatable Dolphins defense. Dolphins are kind of tough against the run, actually, but I just expect Mahomes to spread it around. And I get it. The receivers are an area that could have used an upgrade at the trade deadline, but still Mahomes will figure it out.
I think you're probably right about that. Again, I don't have a lot of concerns about the team as a whole because I think they're just going to be a very different type of team this year. They are going to win with their defense. I think they could win this game but with their defense just all on its own, right? Because it's that good of a unit. And you're so right to bring up the Dolphins offensive line injuries. That's going to cause some problems here against a group that can rush the passer really well, that obviously has a transformative talent in Chris Jones. And then, the secondary's played really well. Trent McDuffie, I think, has quietly been one of the breakout stars so far in the NFL this year at the cornerback position. So I get it. It's just this receiver room is so rough. Like Sky Moore, I don't love how they're using him as like a outside receiver, haven't thrown him deep passes. It's just never going to work. If he was going to hit, he was going to have to be like a Golden Tate type of player. And like, he just has not been used like that. So it's not going to work the way they're using him. And you could tell that like Patrick Mahomes doesn't trust him. He seems like he looks at him and just never throws him the ball. Even if he is open on the play, he doesn't throw it to him because Sky Moore hadn't given him a lot of reasons to trust him. And like Rashee Rice, we're excited about from a fantasy angle, but he only really runs a couple of routes. He's a limited player still at this point. So that's why I think we haven't seen that necessarily full breakout expressed. He's just been the best part of a really broken unit overall. So that's kind of my thoughts just on the Chiefs. And from a fantasy angle, like we kind of know what we're doing with this offense. It does seem like a get-right game potentially for Isaiah Pacheco given the matchup here.
Yeah, actually, the Dolphins have been okay against the run. Pacheco, he's frustrated in PPR, but with this volume and in this offense, the Chiefs have, I think, probably the highest implied team total this week because this is the highest over-under. Yeah, the Chiefs have the highest. So yeah, 26 points. You're starting Pacheco with confidence, even if Miami's okay against the run there. And then schematically, the Chiefs defensively play a lot of man defense, and Tyreek Hill has gone more nuclear against the zone defenses. So I don't know. Even though it is the highest total, I really could see this being, especially in a different time zone, maybe lower scoring than many are expecting here. But then again, it's McDaniel offense, running the motion, and he's always fun. So this is absolutely one of the games of the year. It's cool that it's in Germany. One weird aspect of this week in football is we have pretty much a marquee matchup in each kind of slate, but two of those games are outside the DFS slate. So we're missing the Dolphins, Chiefs, Bills, and Bengals in the DFS slate, not to mention the 4 buys. So it's cool to have these island games, but it also adds a tricky element to those sickos playing, DFS.
Hey, we love those sickos, right? He's been Jalen Waddle. I'm going to talk about Jalen Waddle here for a second. He seems like he's like back. I would imagine like the target share has been there since week 5. It seems like some of the concerns from early in the season are kind of sort of starting to fall away, and especially because they haven't run the ball really well the last couple of games with Raheem Mostert. And Mostert seems like he's good to go. He's going to play in this game, but we know there's still no Achane. Jeff Wilson's still trying to work back into form. I think while their run game is a little bit like stuck in the mud here, then we sort of see we have this great number 2 receiver who can be a matchup dictator that we can scheme up stuff to. And I think we're seeing more and more of that with Jalen Waddle here.
Yeah, Waddle's been also a little less effective against man this season, but that can be noisy, and he's so awesome in this offense. By the way, the new cover matrix scheme on Fantasy Points Data Suite is what I've been looking for, Harmon. So awesome. It posts the opposing defenses, how often they've been playing man zone.
I know, it's pretty sick.
You're starting Waddle, obviously with confidence. He's actually my number 7 receiver this week. So yeah, in a possible shootout, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot. And Waddle's been really targeted in the end zone. And you look at his expected fantasy points; it's higher than what he's actually been getting out there. So yeah, I'm using him even against a secondary that's strong on paper.
We love it. We love to see it. All right, should we move on to the next game or anything else on this one?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. Start your dudes here. And it's always tricky to write my start sit column with the Dolphins because they're just obvious ones and no real sleepers, because it's great when you condense all the targets. And now Mostert gets one more start without Achane. I will say that. So, right. I treated him as, top 7-ish running back here. So I know he didn't blow up last week, but he gets this offense mostly to himself one more week.
All right, next game up here, Seattle Seahawks at Baltimore Ravens, 44.5 over under on this one. I can't wait to watch this game. Like, I want to really dial in on what happens between these two teams here, because they're offenses that I think have the capability to be some of the best units in the NFL. I think for different reasons, we haven't always seen it in there's a lot of weird stuff with the Seahawks where it's kind of like 1 to 2 to 3 plays every week that Geno has you scratching your head. But overall, I think the bones are there for a good offensive performance. And I think overall, outside of those 3 throws a game, I think Geno's been good this year, but 3 throws a game can, like bad decisions, stuff like that, turnovers can change the fortune of an entire offense. Whereas Lamar, I think, has played lights out from start to finish. maybe wasn't perfect last week, but by and large has been really good. And he hasn't necessarily gotten all the help from his supporting cast. So where do you want to start with this one?
Well, on one hand, Lamar, I think, is totally going to bounce back and possibly have, the number one fantasy QB week. He's getting 9.1 YPA at home. And the zone man stuff points for Baltimore's favor here for what it's worth as far as defensive schemes and opposing quarterbacks. That said, the Seahawks secondary is good, healthy and young. They also are pretty good against the run, too. So this is a tricky one. Lamar will ultimately get his. I absolutely believe that, and they're among the highest point totals too this week at home. But it should be a fun one to watch him try to beat this underrated Seattle secondary. I won't talk too much Survivor this week, Harmon, but I only ask you because I respect you, man, and it's $9.3 million. It's not even a bit. I just respect your opinion in football, so I really want to hear it. Like the Browns and the Saints are the two most picked teams this week. You already said, wow, I can't believe the Browns yesterday. I mean, the next highest spread is like this Ravens team. I mean, will the AFC team kill the NFC team again? The Seahawks are going to travel coming off, a last second win. I kind of like that for the Ravens. But this could be a good matchup, right? It should be a close game.
I'm way too much of a coward to pick the Ravens in a Survivor.
Yeah, okay, so you're out on that one too.
Yeah,
so Charbonnet's another variable here. Have you heard Carroll talk about him? I know his talk is whatever. It's hard to trust, but man, that sounded like a player that's going to see 50% of the snaps out of the backfield at least. He's like called him a complete player and was so glowingly about him. And they're just if they're healthy on defense, that team is actually quite interesting.
Yeah, when the reporter asked him like what makes Charbonnet so efficient, and he just like went on and on. Pete Carroll just went on and on and on and on about Zach Charbonnet. And I mean, you watched that game last week, and he was really good when called upon. And I don't think it's a situation where Kenneth Walker really did anything wrong, right? Their run game has actually been much more consistent and successful this year. Actually, it's been sort of the opposite of last year, where Kenneth Walker would have these monster runs, but the success rate would be low because he was inconsistent down to down. This year, the success rate, at least in chapters of the season, has been pretty high. We just haven't necessarily seen like the big play stuff from the run game, and maybe mixing in a little more Charbonnet can bring in the home run hitting of Kenneth Walker. And again, the efficiency of Charbonnet is real. Like, I really do think he's a very good player. So obviously it's not ideal from like a fantasy perspective if you have Kenneth Walker and he's had these games where he's been just over 20 carries. But like nobody gets that, right? Outside of Christian McCaffrey and Travis Etienne so far this year. So welcome to the way the rest of us are living at the running back position. And I do think you could squint at it and see this actually making Kenneth Walker a little better from an explosive play perspective.
Yeah, he's so boomer bust anyway. But I chalked up kind of the snaps at first to him missing practice last week, but it sure sounds like the rookie's here to stay to be a split. But Walker can, easily score 12, 14 touchdowns anyway in this offense that I do expect to improve in the red zone. That's been a big area of need of improvement. And Metcalf, man, has all these attempts down there. He's going to go off for a couple touchdowns one of these weeks. But Baltimore obviously is a tougher secondary matchup as well. So this game is kind of like the first one we talked about. It could go either way. A shootout. You could see it being fun with the offenses going off, but at the same time, underrated defenses.
Baltimore, I don't even know if they're underrated.
Right. Maybe not Baltimore. Everyone knows Baltimore, but Seattle is, I think.
But yeah, for sure. Seattle is definitely underrated. They just acquired Leonard Williams. I think Leonard Williams is going to make a pretty big impact for them. They had been kind of rotating guys in and out there. I think he's going to take that defense up another level. He's still a very good player. I actually kind of see this game being a little bit lower scoring and more of like a good real life football game. But like also, I guess my question would be, one, if it's going to be a high scoring game, right? Like the Seattle Seahawks. I just don't know how the way they've played this year, I do think they have left meat on the bone. I think their offense could be capable of like 35-point outings, but it's just hard for me to imagine this is going to be the game where they do it against Baltimore. Like that would be sort of counterintuitive in my mind, although they put up a pretty good performance against the Browns. Like this is the game where Gino's going to cut those mistakes back. Like this is the game where it's just all going to finally click, even though it hasn't clicked so far. That's like kind of far-fetched to me. And then the second part of it too, if the Seahawks are able to put up points, hypothetically, like from a fantasy angle, who's going to be the guy that gets the benefit on the Ravens side of it? Like, is it going to be Gus Edwards? Is somebody in this receiving room finally going to go off? Like, I think Zay Flowers has been solid this year, but he's never really reached a ceiling necessarily. And I think there's a lot of different reasons for that. So I have a lot of like questions as to why this could be like a high scoring game, I guess.
Yeah, I could see this being a Mark Andrews game, given that the Seattle's been stingy against the wide receivers, and I don't really see Zay Flowers scoring a ton of touchdowns this year. I know he projects well weekly, and PPR he'll be fine, but I don't think he's just going to score as much as some people hope his fantasy upside is. But anyway, I think Seattle could be beaten by Andrews this week is where it's going to lead. Gus Edwards has been scoring all the touchdowns recently. He's a little banged up, expected to play. Maybe Justice Hill gets more touches out of the bat as a receiver. Bateman's got some talk. Yeah, he looked better than he has last week, but it's still, he's got a long ways to go to help fantasy managers. But yeah, I actually think it could be a Mark Andrews game.
Flowers doesn't even have an 80-yard receiving game on the year. I think that would surprise people. Like, his season high is 78 all the way back in week 1. He's been interesting in that he's been really good in the underneath stuff. And then he's been, I think, solid when given chances as a deep receiver, but they just barely make any use of him in that intermediate area, which is where he could be, or where you want your receiver at least to be a really big difference maker. I agree with you. I'm like kind of trying to whisper that like Rashad Bateman looks really good, but
I would love to see it.
Does look better.
Beckham keeps drawing defensive pass interference in the end zone and downfield and all this. It looks like he's got, 0 on the stat sheet, but he's making plays. But then again, he's also banged up too. So it's just hard to trust any of these receivers outside of Zay Flowers right now. I'd love to see Bateman get 10 targets in a game and see what he could do with them.
Yeah, he's kind of cut back the mistakes. I think the confidence is getting back there, and then he just looks healthier. Like the last 2 games for him, because it was true against the Lions too. I think people noticed it maybe more against the Cardinals, but he was looking good and getting good separation across the field against the Lions, whereas early in the season, he'd been getting separation on like short routes, but just anything beyond 10 yards was not there. I think we're starting to see him get back into form, and that would be a really big boost to this offense, because I just don't think Beckham's ever going to give you that consistent pop at this point in his career. So, all right, let's move on to the next game here. Another huge one. I mean, my God, Dallas Cowboys at Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles 3-point favorites at home, 46.5 point total. This one I could see being a very high scoring, very fun fantasy game, primarily because, Dalton, I would argue that what the Cowboys have been the last 2 games prior to their bye and then coming off their bye, I think has been something they can build a formula off of on offense. We talked about it a little bit yesterday. It's on Statner Thursday. I think if this is the way their offense looks going forward, like funneled through CeeDee Lamb and some of those like, okay, Texas Coast concepts, but like Lamb is the number 1 read, I think that would be great for this offense and could push this into a high scoring game.
Yeah, I'd feel a little better if this game were indoors and Dak playing at home, but totally, this still has the makings of a possible shootout. Why would Dallas not go back to what worked for them last week? Came out of their bye with more motion than they ran all season. Lamb led the league with a 41% target share. It worked. He went off against the Rams secondary that hadn't allowed a touchdown to receivers since week 1, 2. Philadelphia, the opponents had the second highest pass rate against them this year. So Pollard, it looks like another disappointing game, and Lamb could be busy. Ferguson could be busy. And conversely, A.J. Brown has eaten man coverage this year, and the Cowboys have played it at the 3rd highest rate. So, man, expect another one. Even against a tougher secondary, I think Brown, the volume is going to work out if you're making these, these decisions in DFS who to spend your salary on. I think Brown it may take like 15 targets instead of 8 last week, but he may end up with a similar like box score because it's going to be required for the Eagles to keep up with the Cowboys. At least that's how I'd like it to become if you want to use these guys in DFS, because the other version of this game is outdoors. Both defenses are good. Division opponents familiar with each other, but let's see the shootout version.
Yeah, neither run game has really hit their highest high marks of late. Obviously, people are way more concerned about Tony Pollard, but and we can talk about him if you want to. But for me, like obviously DeAndre Swift still kind of getting it done from a fantasy perspective, but we haven't seen like the Eagles run game take over a game like we had early in the season. And obviously the matchups were a little bit better. And I don't know that necessarily Dallas is like the get right spot for your run game or anything like that. But I would at least just note going into it that if these two teams have to take to the air because their run games aren't necessarily giving them like big plays, and these are two tougher fronts, especially on Philadelphia's side, like this doesn't profile as a get right game for Tony Pollard at all. So I think that's going to be on people's radar.
Yeah, if you do schedule adjusted, they're easily the toughest opponent for fantasy backs, Philadelphia. Conversely, on the other side of the ball, I should say, Kenneth Gainwell, among 39 qualified running backs, PFF's grade is 39th, yards after contact, 39th, pass block grade, 33rd, yards per route run, 31st, 39th out of 41 running backs in success rate. That's not good. So Swift has this backfield all to himself if he can stay healthy. And this isn't an ideal matchup, but you're looking at that team point total. I mean, Swift's the top 10 back. And I trust Swift over Tony Pollard without question. So Pollard, there's game script issues. Every game's been wild. There's Kellen Moore issues, him leaving for McCarthy. There's the ankle surgery. I think I underrated the third one the most because I understand you lose efficiency with getting more volume, but man, he's just come on, there's no explosive plays like last year. I don't know. It's a combination of all of them, probably.
Probably combination of them all. I do think, obviously, yeah, we probably yada the injury in the playoffs a little too much. Certainly.
It was in front of my face too. Yeah, right. I was right there.
Sure, you were there.
It was
I mean,
ugly,
you boots on the ground, pal. What the hell?
Oh, what was I thinking? It was ugly too. It was like it was a bad injury. It didn't have the deltoid thing that Penny had, so I thought it'd be okay. He was back playing. There was no question of it in August. I mean, no one even talked about it. But something's wrong, man, with explosion. This used to be one of the most explosive backs. All the underlying hood stats was crazy, and now they're just like bottom of the barrel, kind of like I could have been reading his numbers along with Kenny Gainwell over there.
Right. That's kind of what has me interested in watching this game particularly because, and look, it was obviously not like a completely normal game. They ripped up the Rams and they were on that game from the beginning, but Tony Pollard only got 12 carries in that game. And, he took his 12 carries for 53 yards, which is, not nothing. Like it was solid.
Fair.
Rico Dowd gets 5 carries. Like I think they would be wise to maybe get Rico more involved. And, I think Rico Dowd has been fine in the NFL level. And like Mike McCarthy said a lot of good things about him in the preseason. Like if they can get him more of those grinder carries and keep Tony Pollard fresh, which I think they started to do a little bit last week, but again, just such a weird normal game, or a normal game, I should say, that like maybe we see it more expressed in this one. Is this what I would say?
As producer Colin points out, Dallas hasn't allowed a 100-yard rusher or a 100-yard receiver this season. That is interesting. And we need to point out too that Jalen Hurts' inability to run is going to be maybe very helpful for Dallas here. All the more for A.J. Brown targets. I'm telling you, he's man, and Devonta Smith goes the other way against man. So this is just a setup. Can he do 125 plus for his 7th straight game? Man, he's fun to watch. I'm so glad he's been able to stay healthy too. That's a thing with him in the past with Tennessee. It wasn't
don't even say it.
No.
Don't even put it in the air. Don't even put it in the air.
He's just been a beast, man. He's been an argument for like one of the offensive players of the year. He's been that good. He obviously Tyreek Hill's kind of been on his own, but AJ Brown deserves a ton of credit for how he's been playing this year on an offense that really missed Shane Steichen over the first month. He's really helped carry them, and now with Hurts legitimately dealing with an injury that reportedly takes hours of treatment. I think it's a real thing, his knee injury. So props to AJ Brown.
Yeah, producer Colin also notes that Dallas is really bad at defending screen passes, and we haven't seen it as much this year, which has been sort of one of my criticisms of the Seagulls offense, is that they haven't been just like pushing those easy buttons, but like Dallas Goedert on screens, maybe even Swift as a screen
They've been
option.
Targeting Swift way more than they target running backs before. Props to them. That was part of my theory. It was like, Swift's a bad fit in this offense. They really have targeted him more. To their credit, they know they've been playing to the player, not the scheme.
Yeah, 3 targets in each of the last 2 games, 10 targets against the Jets, 6 the week prior to that against the Rams. So some more competitive games there, obviously, for a few of them. So I like that. I like that call out there. And obviously Dallas Goedert is great in the screen game for them. And even Devonta Smith has been good in the screen game in prior years for the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, final game in the binge category. What a treat. Sunday Night Football, Buffalo Bills at Cincinnati Bengals. Bengals are 1.5-point favorites. Over under here is 49.5. We've got some questionable Sunday night games in recent weeks. This feels like one where you close the laptop, Get your work done early, Dalton. Me too. Get your work done. Don't be trying to write a bunch during Sunday Night Football. Close the laptop. Watch this one drive to drive. Because the best part about this, Dalton, is not only do these two teams are some of the best in the AFC. They're some of the best teams in the league right now. I would argue that both of these teams are peaking at the right time, right? Where we saw the Bengals come off the bye, beat your 49ers. Burrow looks better than he had at any point this year. Boom. Love to see it. That's great. The other part about this, too, is Buffalo on Thursday Night Football last week unveiled, and we talked about this yesterday on Stat Nerd Thursday. I think the best possible version of themselves is what the Bills debuted last week on Thursday Night Football, where they have a real slot receiver in Khalil Shakir, not like a tight end faking being a slot receiver. And you just run 11 personnel on 70% of your plays. Everybody's used more effectively. Gabe Davis even gets some like real receiver stuff in the underneath game. That to me looks like the version of the Bills that can push 30 points a game.
Yeah, second highest over-under of the week should be fun. Obviously, emotions ran high last year between these teams. I hear you. Maybe I will have to write through the afternoon slate with no Niners even playing as well, although that Cowboys-Eagles game should be fun. But yeah, this could be one of the absolute games of the year.
Hey, somebody get Jason Klobaka on the blower and tell him we're not writing articles. There's no more articles. Who reads anymore anyways, Dalton?
Yeah, I hear you. This could be one of the games of the year. If the Chiefs aren't involved, this could be a conference title preview. So will the Cincinnati second half defense come alive like it has in the past in these marquee matchups? They're really a smart unit. But Josh Allen playing with the banged up shoulder, but also at the same time making awesome plays, and he and Diggs are doing work. So yeah, this should be fun. Start all your guys. James Cook's, I guess, his just usage has been frustrating, and now there's, eventually Fournette, but he's still kind of regularly treated as a top 20 back, and I get it in this offense. But Dalton Kincaid, this is a nice matchup, and he's immediately treated his ECR as like the tight end 5 this week, and I'm not going to argue against it. So there's no knocks, and as you said, the packages worked well. So, I'm curious if Shakir remains as involved as he was last week.
One target for James Cook last week.
Yeah, it's going the wrong direction for him.
I'm concerned, too, that with this offense transitioning into the version that I'm talking about here, where like they're getting Gabe Davis on quick hitters, they're getting Khalil Shakir on quick hitters, and obviously like there was a play on Thursday, I believe, against the Bucs where Josh Allen like alerts Stephon Diggs, and it's just like, you got single coverage on the outside. Like we're getting a comeback curl route, hitch route to him every single time there. And then obviously Kincaid's doing his thing too. Like James Cook was kind of that primary check down option when they were running like all vertical routes with the two tight ends. And like, Josh Allen, God bless him, is going to, if it's a high-low concept, he's reading the high. He's wants to throw that vertical pass, but like, all right, I didn't get that. My check down here, James Cook, he had 6 targets in week 1. Like, I think those 6 target games for James Cook in a neutral situation, that's not going to happen anymore.
No, I think his values heading in the wrong direction. He gets red zone looks, and especially at the goal line taken from him at times. So it's not ideal there at all. Battling Murray and Allen at the goal line there. So yeah, and then on the flip side, you just love to see. I went crazy about Burrow in the last pod, and he took more snaps under center last week, basically, than he did the previous first 6 weeks, and he looks awesome. He's back.
Bills' defensive injuries continue to be a thing too. Kaiir Elam, they place him on IR. They signed Linval Joseph. Daquan Jones was kind of their like 2-gapper to start the season. Obviously, now they're doing what the Eagles did last year, where the defensive tackle situation is not going so well. Let's go ahead and sign Linval Joseph. Maybe Ndamukong Suh can come to Buffalo next. We'll see. Just like, again, the Eagles did last year and they go to the Super Bowl. So Elam placed on IR. He'd been kind of hit or miss anyways. Maybe this is finally T. Higgins' get-right game. I saw a stat, I think, from Sleeper, another fantasy platform. Don't fire me, bosses, for mentioning another fantasy platform on the podcast. I think they had a stat that T. Higgins was the most represented player on winless teams so far this year. 13% of winless rosters have T. Higgins on them. And as somebody that has T. Higgins on by far my worst fantasy team so far this year, with a lot of people, I'm embarrassed to be playing this poorly in this league. I feel you, folks. I feel you on the T. Higgins stuff. So hopefully this is his get right game here with against an injured Bills defense.
Burrow got 9.3 YPA at home over 9 games 2 seasons ago, 7.9 last year. He's tough. This should be fun. Do we have a pick here, Harmon?
No.
No, yeah, I know. I could see this one. Yeah. The spread's right. It is what it is. The line's 1.5. The home team. It's right. I mean, there's no edge there. I mean, these are two of the best teams, and with Burrow back looking healthy. I'm not going to give you a hard time. I don't feel strong.
I'll probably pick the Bengals because they're at home when I do like my picks pool with my friends and stuff. So yeah, I will probably pick not against the spread, just straight up. I think I'll take Bengals there, but then I'd probably take Bengals minus 1.5 if I'm picking this game. So
okay, fair.
I love the Bills. So.
Oh yeah. Well, you love Diggs. I know that
exactly. All right, and by the way, just last thing on Khalil Shakir. I really hope there's some staying power there. I feel like we're kind of sleeping on what could have been a breakout performance in week number 8 there. Really liked what I saw. All right, let's get into the stream category here. We spent 30 damn minutes on those 4 games because they deserved it. They were very good quality football games. But let's move into the stream category here. Minnesota Vikings at Atlanta Falcons. Atlanta Falcons are 4.5-point home favorites. It's an over-under of 37.5. ODU's finest is back in our lives here, Dalton. There are very few sure bets in our lives, Dalton. But one sure bet is if the head coach comes on the Monday press conference and doesn't emphatically say, oh yeah, like Desmond Ritter's starting this week. If they have to say anything like we're evaluating, we'll see, they're going to bench the guy. Okay. So that's what happens to Desmond Ridder. Taylor Heineke's playing now, this is how it unfolded with Arthur Smith. So how much does Taylor Heineke coming in here impact Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson, etc.?
I'll say slight upgrade. That's what I'll say. Ridder was throwing the ball much better the last 2 games. His problem was loose with the fumbles. But that said, he had some disaster outings too. And Heineke can get it done. So a moderate upgrade, or maybe even higher if you want. It's helpful. That said, London's battling a groin injury. He may miss this game. Scotty doesn't know Miller is like a real deep DFS sleeper if you wanted him. Kyle Pitts gets the upgrade here with a banged up London and an upgrade at quarterback. Yeah, I mean, I think that's helpful for Pitts. Bijan Robinson faces a defense that ETR has as the second toughest matchup, the Vikings, for opposing running backs, for what it's worth, just to opponents. I was a little surprised that they've been that stingy. But you're still obviously starting Robinson as a top 10 guy, but if you're debating him in DFS, something to consider. But also, that could be countered by more targets with Drake London. But the problem there, if you're looking for like a lot of passing this week from Atlanta, is Jaren Hall and the Vikings going to be up to the task, to put up points on their side? Because it's a bad matchup for Madison. The Falcons shut down the run. Maybe we see Josh Dobbs as a quick study in the second half. Hasn't been ruled out. But this could be a tough game, especially for Minnesota's offense on the road with Hall starting his one and possibly only game. So this might look back and be like, that's a tough spot. Like if I were crazy, maybe you zig and zag in Survivor and take the Falcons here, coming off a loss with Heineke, facing Hall. Or am I overrating the quarterback position and this Vikings team's very good at defense? The line is what it is. They're 4.5-point favorites. The Browns are 8-ish. It is what it is. So what are your thoughts here? I mean, that is an option, man, using the Falcons.
I like the Falcons as a potential survivor pick here because, again, we just don't know what we're going to get out of the quarterback position. Like with Minnesota, I know Josh Dobbs is a quick study, but he literally just got there.
Yeah.
I think the part that people are underrating when he went from Cleveland to Arizona so late in the year is that was the exact same offense that he had been playing under in Cleveland. Okay. Drew Petzing was the quarterback's coach in Cleveland, so there was experience there with Josh Dobbs. Again, Drew Petzing, the offensive coordinator now with the Arizona Cardinals. So that was a pretty easy transition there from him. Like Kevin Stefanski's offense, Drew Petzing's offense, there's a lot of similarities there. Kevin O'Connell doesn't quite come from the same tree, and he's been a little bit like a perfect blend, in my opinion. I love the way Kevin O'Connell designs and calls plays. I think what he's done has been sort of a perfect blend of like the Jared Goff Rams offense and the Matthew Stafford Rams offense. They've blended a lot of that together. I just don't know how much, can Josh Dobbs pick that all up in 1 week? We did see Baker Mayfield do this last year, right? Where he went to the Rams midweek and ended up actually starting and winning a game. So maybe it happens here with Josh Dobbs. I don't know, but that's just one thing I'd note.
And Jaren Hall's an unknown, maybe he doesn't struggle until there's film on him. Good. I'm saying it could go both ways. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Maybe he turns out to be a disaster, but you don't know his weaknesses right away. But that said, the Vikings have won 3 in a row, and the Falcons have been tougher at home and coming off a loss. It's not a setup that I hate.
Falcons lost one of their best defensive players, Grady Jarrett, last week. That was kind of
you're right. That's
story.
huge. Yes,
that's huge
Grady
too.
Jarrett is huge. I meant to bring that up even, and you're right. If I'm considering that, that's a big injury. Yeah.
And the other thing I'd note too about the Falcons that I think quietly, and now I'm kind of talking myself and you out of
Drake
this,
London's not going to play.
Drake London might not play. And also just like the one big, probably unexpected thing about the Falcons offense this year is that the offensive line play has not been as good. They've been not as good as last year, but they've been okay from a run blocking perspective, but they have really been a mess in pass protection. And that's a problem that Desmond Ridder has exacerbated so far. He has a 9.4% sack rate so far this year. And I think it's a big part of what got him taken out of that game. You know, the concussion stuff, I have no idea. But I think the reason that even if he was healthy, why they left Taylor Heineke in there, like the real reason in Arthur Smith's heart of hearts is that he's like, okay, Desmond can't function under pressure. He took 5 sacks in the first half. He's been terrible under pressure this year, and it's made him more mistake prone than he probably should be. And Taylor Heineke, like, he's not perfect, you know, but his sack rate throughout the course of his career is under 8% at least. Was 6.8% last year with Washington. Only took 1 sack, you know, with the Falcons this past week. Like, he can get you out of more jams. And, you know, he's always been. By the way, did you see Taylor Heineke's Halloween costume this year?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
The deer in the headlights. I mean, come on.
My wife sent me that. It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah. The guy's he's a dog. He's good under pressure. So I think that might be where he gives him a little bit of an upgrade there. But the loss of Grady Jarrett, potentially not having Drake London, that would be problematic.
This surprises me. And again, not all pressure rates are the same and throughout sites, but Pro Football Focus has the Falcons as the second highest pressure rate this season behind only the Jets. Their defense.
That they've been getting it done getting it done with like a collection of guys. But Grady Jarrett not being there is a problem. So if you're looking to start, you know, your guys like Jordan Addison, I mean, TJ Hawkinson obviously is an auto start. Like,
did the Vikings trade their lineman? Am I making that up? Ezra? Am I making that
Cleveland,
up?
He was traded to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Okay, so these are interesting back and forth here. Okay, all right. It's
this is a really difficult game to read. Really difficult game to read, this one. But all right, let's move on to the next one here. Washington Commanders. 3.5-point favorites going into New England to take on the Patriots, 40.5-point over-under. I waffled with this one, Dalton, whether to put it in stream or skip, because I'd really love to skip the Patriots, especially without Kendrick Bourne. And the Commanders, though, I'll tell you what, with no Montez Sweat, no Chase Young, and apparently like ownership was the one that just came down. It was like, we're trading these guys, okay? We're fire selling. This is about the future, whatever. Like, we're moving on to the next thing. Ron Rivera is just playing out the string. We know how this is going to end for old Riverboat Ron there. But I think their offense is going to be putting up points every single week now, with the defense even more hampered than it already was. So I don't know who on the Patriots is going to be the bring back here, but I do think like Jahan Dotson's in a good spot. Terry McLaurin's is in a good spot. Sam Howell's in a good spot. Like, these guys, I think, can put up big games here in week number 9.
Yeah, I think this could be a fun game to like a punt and DFS type. Shout out to Tommy who hit me with the direct message. He appreciated all the juju talk on the previous pod. But Demario Pop Douglas, well done, Harmon. And no, I think this could go back and forth here. The Washington secondary has been the best matchup for opposing fantasy QBs this season, schedule adjusted. They look like totally beatable, and that's before they traded away Chase Young and Sweat from the defensive line. So, I would prefer Kendrick Bourne be healthy, but Mac Jones, who's played far better at home this season, can still get Hunter Henry involved, Gesicki, Douglas, Juju, Rager. I think he could put points on the board. And then the other side, Washington's number 2 in pass rate over expectation and just throws the ball every single play. I think it kind of works to both sides. Could be sneaky. And then the over-under is only 41 points here. Let's not get too crazy. But if you're looking for, let's put it this way. I have Mac ranked as my 12th QB this week, and he's like 20th in ECR or something. I think he's going to throw a couple touchdowns at home against Washington, with, of course, Juju being the recipient of at least one.
I'm going to be so dialed into this game. I mean, I was already going to be dialed into it because I have like way too much emotionally invested in Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson and Curtis Samuel, although he might not play in this game. So I'm already way too dialed into the stupid Commanders. They're obviously always like a local game, so I almost always have them on my third screen here. Now I'm going to be dialed into it just to see if old Juju can get himself into the end zone here. Thanks a lot, Dalton.
Oh, he'll be visiting Pater this week, but sure. Ramondre will pick up some, 50 receiving yards. I think Mac Jones will get some points against the Washington defense. It's really been just so inviting. And again, you just love on the other side, Hal being the other one, getting the ball out quicker out of his hands, taking fewer sacks because of it. So yeah, it's going to be a game that I think McLaurin, is a top 15 receiver. Robinson's so tough. Brian Robinson's I recommend him. I know, but he did quietly go back to getting, but the running, he quietly went back to getting the carries at least last week. But yeah, probably already seen the best. I still believe in the player, though. I think he's going to have spike weeks still. Maybe I'm wrong. But this is going to be a game that I think has fun potential to be a shootout. Obviously under the radar, no one expecting.
I am with you that I think we see a lot of like spike weeks we see a good bit of spike weeks down the stretch for Brian Robinson. It's just going to be very, very tough to project. So yeah, you convinced me here that this is going to be a pretty fun fantasy game. So I'm dialed into it.
Yeah, if Dotson's a thing again and Samuel is hopefully plays, let's do it.
All right, next game up, Tampa Bay Buccaneers at Houston Texans. Texans are 3-point home favorites. We got a 40-point over-under. Dalton, this one I also could see being a pretty fun fantasy game. Maybe not to the level of fun of Washington Commanders at New England Patriots, but I could see this one providing a lot of bounce-back performances from guys like CJ Stroud and Nico Collins and maybe like a Chris Godwin type on the other side.
Yeah, high bar to clear there to beat that New England matchup. But I'm with you here for sure because I've seen many people say that the Houston is a great matchup for Rachaad White. I just beg to differ. Ryans, I think, has that unit playing far better against the run. I mean, you look at their matchups. Since week 2, they haven't allowed any fantasy back to reach 16 points, and they've faced Travis Etienne, Bijan Robinson, Alvin Kamara. Last week, Carolina's backfield didn't combine for 10 points. They're just playing better run defense, and that's going to result in Mayfield throwing the ball more. So yeah, Godwin, Evans, even Cade Otton, it could be like a top 15 tight end this week. And then on the other side, Stroud coming off one of his worst games as a pro and now back home with a banged up Dameon Pierce. Again, they're going to be throwing the ball, putting points up. So yeah, I think this is sneaky. Nico Collins, 4 games on the road this season, 45 yards per game, 0 touchdowns. 3 games at home, 131 yards and 3 touchdowns. Like the matchup for him, like the matchup for Tank Dell. Robert Woods remains out. If you want to really get ugly and deep, Noah Brown has been actually pretty good when he has played. So even Dalton Schultz at tight end. So yeah, this could be a good fantasy game actually.
If you look at some of you mentioned the fantasy points data coverage suite. The Bucs actually are leading the league right now in too high coverage percentage. And talk about this on my show Reception Perception about like how number 1 receivers are typically better against single high defense from a yards per route run standpoint. And there's a lot of reasons to that, but I think Nico Collins, he could definitely still smash in this game. There's no question about that. But I also think that leads me to think like Tank Dell as that movable chess piece number 2 receiver could potentially even be better against these 2 high coverage looks that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offer you here. So that is something to keep in mind. I just think that this team overall, this game overall, neither of these teams run the ball well. Like there's going to be a lot of pass attempts in this one. So I think it's going to be a pretty fun fantasy game.
Yep, totally with you here. And I'm not saying to bench White, but just realize because he's been getting the targets lately too. That's been nice.
God.
But so he's been, one of the least effective runners in football, and just realize that this Houston team is playing better defense. They remain donkeys offensively. I still don't get slow at calling all these run plays. I think they're even aware of it too, but they defensively they're playing well. Hopefully, schematically, they change offensively because they have Stroud looking, great. So, and Collins and Dell. But again, back and forth here could be fun because Mayfield will be up for the task. He'll be up for a shootout.
Oh, totally. Yeah, he always is. I mean, he can get himself into a fun little game here. So I like this one a lot. That's a good environment for fantasy. I also like this next one a lot too. Indianapolis Colts 2.5-point favorites going to Carolina to take on the Panthers at the 44.5-point over-under. this is another game that it's interesting. Like, we have a lot of these big marquee games in the NFL this week, like our 4 games in the what the hell do we call this show? The binge category, right? For this one, like a lot of potential fantasy juice in those ones, but also could they end up being like slobber knocker, really good NFL games that aren't necessarily the best fantasy environments? And then, I mean, these games like the damn Colts at Panthers. The Panthers throw to their wide receivers a ton. They ran a lot smoother of an operation last week with Thomas Brown taking over the play calling. They straight up benched Miles Sanders, basically like threw him in the backseat, which is crazy considering the amount of money they gave him. And I don't think Chuba Hubbard has been great this year, but he's been better than Miles Sanders, which is not a high bar to clear at all, but it just is what it is. And then on the other side, we talked about the Colts and Statner Thursday, how they have been playing fast. They've not been doing a lot of no huddle, and like teams on the other side then end up playing a lot of plays. So this one's, I think, could sneak up on people as well as a pretty fun fantasy game.
100% agree with you. Again, it's like watch these Eagles Dallas games and the other primetime ones disappoint. And I'm totally with you. It's a possibility. The Colts games this season have combined for the most average snaps. Chuba Hubbard, you say is disappointed, but he's actually been top 10 in rush yards over expectation this season. And yes, he was shut down last week when given the feature role, but it came against my vaunted Houston run defense, as I said. And also Bryce Young last week posted career highs in catchable throw rate, passer rating, and completion percentage over expectation. He played better than the box score indicates. Yes, he took too many sacks last week, but coming out of the bye, the new play caller, they're moving in the right direction. Indy's secondary is totally I'm not sure what's a better matchup because their secondary is so beatable, but at the same time, they've also allowed an NFL high 15 rushing touchdowns too. So yeah, fast-paced teams. I think this is going to be a fun one.
All right, next one up here. LA Chargers, 3.5-point favorites going to the Jets on Monday Night Football. Over under is 40.5. I mean, this one is a little tougher for me to put in the like could be a potentially fun fantasy game, but the Chargers defense stinks. We know where the ball is going in terms of the Jets offense. A lot of actual NFL playoff implications here, as producer Colin notes. So that is definitely for sure. But I don't know, man. I just my trust level on both of these teams is pretty low.
Yeah, Eckler has a tough matchup on the ground, but he could see a ton of targets in this one. And I love Brees Hall. Both those guys could finish his top 2 fantasy backs this week in the same game. Love Garrett Wilson too. Yeah, tougher matchup for Keenan Allen. Lower expectations for Joshua Palmer. Don't start Quentin Johnston. This is an even lower expectation for Herbert. It's a tougher matchup that figures to not be sneaky scoring, like we said. The others, those backs will be very busy, but I don't expect a ton of trips to the end zone in this one. I feel like there'll be too many field goals, and still dealing with Zach Wilson holding back their offense with an awesome underrated Jets defense leads the league in pressure rate.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see what this Chargers offense looks like against the Jets defense that's been great.
Keep that ADOT low, right? It makes sense to do it against this defense. Yeah,
playing a lot of man coverage are the New York Jets so far this year. I don't think the Chargers have the players to separate against man coverage, especially on the outside. Obviously, Keenan Allen's going to do his thing, but that's pretty problematic. I think it's going to be a lot of like, what's the over-under on Austin Eckler receptions in this one? I think I'll be probably pounding the over on that. Just again, keep the ADOT low, check down, move the offense, that type of stuff. And yeah, on the other side, I think Zach Wilson's been fine, but I don't know. Chargers is 3.5-point favorites going into New York. I see this one as we're having Brandon Staley conversations after this game. That's my prediction. Don't tell Austin that's what I think, but that's what I think coming out of this.
Oh yeah, Jets 3.5 would be one of my favorite bets of the week. I don't love the Chargers as favorites.
All right, let's move into the skip category here, and we can go a little quick on these ones, Dalton, because I know you got to go get your hair cut, my friend. You know, I mean, you look great. The hair looks good, man, but I know you got to get yourself tweaked here. So Arizona Cardinals at Cleveland Browns here. Browns are 7.5-point favorites. They're on Dalton's Survivor radar, 37.5-point total in this one. Just real quick on the Cardinals, any interest in starting any of these players with Clayton Tune as the starting quarterback here?
So we're not sure. I mean, Kyler Murray keeps practicing in full. You read the quotes, and it sounds like, it's like, well, it'd be like starting a game in July for him with about lack of practices, is what the OC said. So, and it does seem like a bit of malpractice if you threw him out there against this defense right away. Mm-hmm. But I'm just not going to totally rule out that Murray starts this. But Clayton Tune's another just complete unknown. I just have no idea how he's going to perform. Therefore, I don't love it. The Browns are allowing an NFL low 3.6 yards per play at home. I mean, that's half yard lower than any other team. But that said, you delve into the Walker numbers and all the turnover-worthy plays, and it is just it's not great either. I mean, it's wild to back a team like that with that quarterback position. But Amari Cooper, way better at home. Good matchup here. Cardinals dealing with a lot of injuries. I mean, including the running back position, Michael Wilson, Trey McBride. You got to play, but the Browns have been especially tough against tight ends. So, they have to travel and play, a morning game in Cleveland. So, you said no way. Survivor. They're 8-point favorites, but man, it's not one you feel comfortable.
I'm starting to feel a little bit different about it. Just for the fact that they're at home and the defense is what it is. I mean, it's Clayton Tune. Yeah, you're starting to convince me that
I guess my main question before I move on to Survivor is this. Do you feel strongly or do you feel equally about the Saints at home against the Bears? That's the main question here to go along with, if you want to do something crazy like the Falcons. Saints versus Browns, if your life depended on it, who would you go with? Who's going to win the football game?
Oh, God, I think I'm going to go Saints because we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that game in a second. I think I'm going Saints, and just imagine tethering your life to Derek Carr. Jeez. I mean, Josh McDaniels didn't want to do it. Look how that ended up with him. So I don't know.
No
we'll talk about that game in just a second. But all right, let's move on. Actually, I don't know.
And you can't do anything with the Browns three-headed committee. It's tough. Yeah. It's a great matchup. You'd love it. I mean, starting Hunt if you have them, just running backs with buys and whatnot. But it's just a frustrating situation that's turned into the running backs for Cleveland because such a great setup otherwise with the offensive line and defense and hide the quarterback.
Yeah, I'm interested to see if no DPJ now officially opens things up maybe for Elijah Moore to take some more vertical reps, or does Cedric Tillman get involved here as their rookie X receiver? We'll see. Those are just some things to keep an eye on. Not necessarily going to do anything about it in fantasy, but
it sounds like my guy Marquise Goodwin could get a shot here too, but he even missed practice too. So and he's obviously old and not the future of the team, but it sounds like he's a guy that moved up.
He's your guy? Chart. He's way too old to be your guy.
Niner. At one point, he was drafted way too high. We were hypey, right? He came when Shanahan first came, and he was overdrafted.
I remember that.
Yeah, Jerick McKinnon and was going in round 3, and Goodwin was going in round 5 and 6, and believe it or not,
what a time!
Good guy too. He suffered some tragedies off field too. No, he's a good guy.
All right, LA Rams at Green Bay Packers. Packers are 3-point home favorites. 38.5-point over under here. No, man, this game looks ugly, bro. I mean, if we get Brett Rippon as the starting quarterback for the Rams, there's a reason this is in the skip category.
Yeah, I don't have much to say here. You'd like Henderson here. They're going to go the last 3 weeks. The Rams have been the lowest pass rate over expectation in the league, negative 12%, negative 11%, wild. And now they don't have Stafford or a compromised one against a defense that's vulnerable against the run. So they're going to get a lot of Henderson. You can even start Freeman if you want in a flex this week. Nakua is banged up, and Kupp, they're not outdoors with Rippon. It's going to be a lot of running and defense against Jordan Love making mistakes. This one just screams low scoring to me.
I like that Freeman call out, though, that if you're desperate at running back, you could potentially play him just because there's going to be a lot of rushing here. All right, let's move on to the next one here. Chicago Bears at New Orleans Saints. The Saints are 8.5-point favorites. Like you mentioned, they're in the survivor consideration here. 41-point total. Dude, the Bears offense is brutal. I can't believe we were kind of gaslit by so much Bagent talk. Especially, Chris Collinsworth, God bless him. But he would not shut up about man, see that throw where Tyson Bagent threw it 3 yards down the field? They're going to be showing that to Justin Fields as teach tape. I'm if Justin Fields' career hinged on he had to watch Tyler Bagent get it done, or that was the key to getting him on track, well, he was never going to work. Okay. Cause the Bears offense with Bajan has just been so pathetic. I know there was the one Mooney play that you pointed out, but they're not pushing the ball.
There were two plays that I guess they ended up driving down and scoring that same drive. So that's, you don't want to double count that. But the Velus Jones one was wide open in the end zone too. He underthrew it and he fell down. I mean, whatever, but that was another touchdown.
Yeah, well,
40-yard touchdown. I mean, look at his stats if those two were touchdowns.
Good.
Okay. that's
they're not converting because the players aren't good outside of DJ Moore, and he's not getting those vertical targets like he was with Justin Fields was in there.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll stand by this teabag hate, man, because the last two opponents, the Raiders, are quietly really bad against opposing quarterbacks. And then last weekend, the Chargers, you got 6.3 YPA with two receivers turning down 80 yards on the field. That other one was, the whistle was blown early, first play of the game. He's taken just one sack all these games, too, better than Fields.
He's fine. He's fine.
All right. I feel like they faced a Chargers A+ performance to me, a team that had lost 2 in a row. They were pissed, Eckler, and they faced an A+ performance and got bad ref calls and everything went wrong against them. And do you know that New Orleans can't play at home?
No.
What's up with that?
What is this? I don't know.
They're 1-2 at home and 3-2 on the road this year. Here are their home games. A 16-15 squeaker against the Titans week 1, blown out by Tampa Bay and blown out by Jacksonville. Well, not blown out, but beat by Jacksonville. So is that small sample noise, or is that something that I perk my eyebrows up that this team at home here and Carr struggles against whatever coverage that the Bears run too? Oh, by the way, the Bears allowing the fewest yards per carry in the NFL and only 4 rushing touchdowns too, have a top 10 DVO defense against the run. So if I know everyone's smashing Kamara in DFS, but you're relying on a dozen targets there because this team, a team that is allowing the fewest yards per carry against the run, right? With Derek Carr in the red zone, what could go wrong?
Oh my God. Yeah. What could go wrong? Everything could go wrong. The Bears play a ton of cover 38.5% cover 3 percentage, according to Fantasy Points data, which is hilarious that that's the coverage that Derek Carr struggles against. At least I think that's what you're referencing. Cause good quarterbacks just can tear up. And if you good quarterbacks with good players can tear up a cover 3 defense. We've seen that historically, right? When Pat Mahomes was, every time they go against the Gus Bradley Raiders, he'd just rip them to shreds. But then when he was really struggling with those cover 2 teams, that was the trend there. So I don't know. That is really an interesting kind of data point there. But
yeah, I know his passer rating's lower. His fantasy points have gotten a little bit more per drop back against zone this year than against man, for what it's worth. So don't want to overrate that. I only really like to talk about this stuff when they're dramatic outliers. But I heard a professional gambler talking that Carr is a bad matchup for the Bears, and I might have just assumed that he was right there. So we don't want to overrate that. He doesn't
push the ball downfield at all. He doesn't.
It's just cool having all this new data, and you can look at it and stuff and just try, but you don't want to get overwhelmed in it. But Carr is just Carr, man. He's prone to mistakes. Chris Olave leads the league in by a mile in unrealized air yards for a reason, right? I mean, he had he led the league in air yards last week, but 190 and finished with 38 or something. I mean, it's wild stuff. But the Bears are a team rebuilding. They just traded away players. Although Jalen Johnson, they did not trade away. But maybe it's Bagent 0 and what are they going to do against the New Orleans Saints defense? And it turns into a healthy cover too. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here when we're talking 9.3 mil.
Yeah, I get that. Rashid Shaheed is a sneaky start, I think, in this one. The Bears play a ton of zone coverage. Scott Barrett has pointed out that Rashid Shaheed smashes against zone coverage, which makes sense because he's just running. He's running down there, quarters, anything like that. He's just going to, he just runs. So I do think that makes a lot of sense there for Rashid Shaheed. But shall we move on to the final game?
How high are you ranking Taysom Hill?
Enough that you can definitely hate yourself and start him.
God, I know it's crazy getting the goal line carries like that. Juwan Johnson is healthier and will get more snaps, but
Kalen Saunders package though.
It's tough.
It's tough. You can't stop it.
So maybe they will eat it in the red zone. There's your red zone answer. I said against it won't be Kamara, it won't be Carr. It'll just be Taysom Hill. 2 more plunges into the end zone.
Yeah, it's happening. So get yourself ready for it. All right, a final game on the slate here: New York Giants at Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders are 1.5 point favorites. Over-under is 37.5. Daniel Jones probably going to be back. That's great. The Raiders wished Jimmy G a happy birthday on Twitter today.
Did they really?
Yeah, you didn't see that?
I did not. I was too preoccupied with something else I'll get to next. Go ahead. That's great, though. Wow.
Oh yeah, they wished him happy birthday. I'm excited to hear what you have next. But so I'll say this: yesterday I was very down on like the Raiders. Like they're just playing out the string, whatever. It's over. Just. But I tell you what, man. Realize this after talking to my buddy James Coe yesterday. I think like Josh McDaniels is such an energy sucker. Like he looks. You watch that guy on the sidelines and you're like, yeah, I have no confidence in him. There's no way the players have any confidence in him. It's a total disaster of a situation. Antonio Pierce is talking about how, he wants to feel the players and all that phrasing, but like he definitely seems like an awesome dude that's going to bring some energy to this team. My guy, Scott Turner, might take over as the OC. I don't know if that's been made official yet, but he's like one of the only guys on the staff that has some play calling experience. Love to see that. Aiden O'Connell back there instead of, lifeless retirement home Jimmy G. Could the Raiders actually like have a second half of the season surge? Not that it points to anything good, but like they have the players, at least on offense, to put up a ton of points.
All right, this is almost certainly fake news, but I just have to bring it up. Have you heard the rumor of how Mark Davis fired McDaniels?
I have heard, yes.
Okay,
yes.
So it's probably not real, right? I mean, but the story goes, and it's all like sourced and stuff. So like that McDaniels loved going all out for Halloween costumes, so he showed up dressed as Mark Davis the day after losing the Niners on Monday Night Football. Davis seemed to take it in stride at first, but then he ordered, I guess, P.F. Chang's lunch and McDaniels to complete a look from Al Davis, I guess. And then McDaniels read and then Davis suggested McDaniels read his fortune cookie, which read, "You're fired, hotshot." According to multiple sources who viewed the dessert, is how it ends. According to multiple sources who viewed the dessert, might be my favorite part of that. But as Kramer said, any story like that's got to be true. Anyway, probably not, but that's just amazing there. And this one could this one's going to be low scoring, but Daniel Jones is at least back. No Darren Waller. Saquon Barkley saw 41 opportunities last week and now gets a defense allowing the fourth most fantasy points, second most EPA per rush. He's going to get a lot of targets. Hopefully his ankle can hold up here. He's a debate, him or Kamara maybe in your DFS lineup. And then conversely, Josh Jacobs, I thought looked the best he had all season last week. And AOC, man, I mean, Devontae Adams did have a 25% target share, limited sample with O'Connell compared to just 12% by Myers for what it's worth. And boy, if there's a squeaky wheel narrative, you got to think a very frustrated Adams is going to just walk into double-digit targets this week. That's probably my favorite bet of the week is Adams is going to see double-digit targets.
I love it. I think Antonio Pierce, a former player, is going to be kind of like in on the idea of, all right, let's like the best player on our roster, like the most storied player on our roster. Like, let's get him going here. I'm kind of in on this. Like Raiders are going to be plucky. Like it's not as if guys like Josh Jacobs and Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams and Max Crosby, like the best players on the roster, weren't giving any effort before, but maybe guys like, 6 to 53 weren't giving as much effort, knowing that like, yeah, we're just sinking. We're sinking on this ship with Josh McDaniels. Now he's out of there. Antonio Pierce is putting some energy into this thing. I'm kind of in on the Raiders bouncing back here.
I mean, I just don't know what to say about my guy, Jimmy G. That was just an ugly performance. I don't know. But what do you do with that contract? I haven't looked into it, so I know they can get out of it, I assume. I mean, if their sources are even saying, why are you switching O'Connell? They're like, because he's our best quarterback, is what the quote I saw. So I think they're ready to move on. I don't know how that works with him. But yeah. Who's more cooked? You're saying Carr or Jimmy G? It's a good question. But my guy, Garoppolo, did not look great, man. It was, he might be a backup moving forward.
I don't even know if he's like a viable backup. I think they can get out of it. Well, it's going to hurt a little bit maybe. And the crazy thing is they had a chance to avoid this whole thing. I don't want to bag on Jimmy G a ton, but it just was such a bad idea. And he just looks physically done. And because he's been injured he's been injured this year. He's had the bad back. They kept talking about it on the broadcast. Like, oof, look at his back. Yikes, getting hit in the back. I just think it's unfortunately over for Jimmy.
Oh, quickly, I would say Evan Neal and Andrew Thomas combined them. Both tackles may return for the Giants, along with Daniel Jones, who reportedly cleared last week. So maybe he was actually, healthy a whole week more. And I know it's, keep expectations in check. But indoors here against the Raiders D, I could see Crosby, of course, could disrupt that with Daniel Jones taking all the sacks.
Especially over Evan Neal. I mean, Andrew Thomas is a very, very good player, but like and he makes a difference coming back for sure. That left tackle spot's been a disaster without him anyways, but Evan Neal hasn't really been a great player to this point in his career. You know, he got into like fights with the fans a few weeks ago. Like Max Crosby could definitely light that part of the offensive lineup for sure.
Fair enough, but certainly a different unit than it was, patchwork a few weeks ago, and with Tyrod Taylor there, and now we got although Tyrod Taylor's playing fine, but Tommy DeVito, it'll be an upgrade here for Danny Dimes. That much I'm confident in.
Yeah, they won't have their best quarterback back, the New York Giants, but they will have somebody who's better than Tommy DeVito. So there's
well
that.
Put, better than me. Well said.
All right.
So before you go, come on. So Saints over Browns. Yeah. Saints over Browns. All right. Appreciate you, Harmon. Or maybe
maybe you don't, bro. I don't know. Betting on Derek Carr. I don't like it. So, all right, there we are. Well, Dalton, appreciate it. Double dip duty for you on the podcast this week, but this was awesome. I had a blast talking ball with you today, so I appreciate it, man.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good times.
All right, that is going to do it for us today. Good luck out there in week 9. This is going to be after talking with Dalton today, I think this is going to be a really fun and interesting slate. I can't wait to see it all unfold in exactly the opposite way that I projected to unfold, because that's how these things go. After all that happens, be sure to tune in first thing Monday morning to hear Scott Pianowski and I break down all the action from this very interesting week number 9. Until then, we're out.